So if you guys are wondering why there's an article on this screen about a trade war going on between America and Canada, well then I will fill you in why that's showing up on a channel about pop culture, because everything going on between the US and Canada right now has bled through into Hollywood. It's bled through into the Canadian entertainment industry, and it's led to some pretty funny examples that I actually want to talk about today, about Canadian celebrities and people supporting Canada who are trying to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. And that's why I brought this article up to begin with, because it said that Trump was delaying, at least until today, delaying reciprocal tariffs against Canada. Canada put theirs through. It's not the point of this. Nobody cares about the tariffs if you're watching a pop culture channel. You go to the political channel to watch that stuff if you want to talk about that. But I want to discuss it because what's been going on has actually been pretty interesting, given the fact that a lot of Canadian celebrities have kind of come out to speak out against Trump because he's made his comments about annexing Canada and turning it into the 51st state, which really upset a lot of Canadian celebrities like Michael Myers, like Michael Bublé. If you don't know who Michael Bublé is, he's a singer. But Michael Myers, I will always love and respect because he made the masterpiece that is Wayne's World, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. But this is what happens when politics bleeds through into the culture and you can't get away from it no matter where you go. So I remember this from like a month ago where Michael Myers wore a Canada is not for sale shirt on Saturday Night Live. He actually does a pretty funny like Elon Musk impression. I wouldn't say that it was like super 100% accurate, but it kind of calls back to Dr. Evil and everybody loves Austin Powers. So look, I got no problem with that. But those comments that Trump made, like we talked about it the other night. Trump has this very unique ability to shift news cycles with his rhetoric and what he talks about. So when he was talking about annexing Canada, when he talks about, Greenland and all of this stuff, how much of it is real, how much of it is trolling, and how much of it is just trying to shift the news cycle away from something he doesn't want people to talk about and onto something more over the top, that what it's really going to do is it's going to make your extremely progressive or your liberal aunt hate you at the holidays, which I always make the joke about. But it depends, like how much do you follow this stuff? But a lot of Canadian celebrities had a lot to say about it. So it wasn't just Mike Myers who wore the shirt that said Canada is not for sale. There was also Michael Bublé the other day, who he challenges Trump with patriotic Canadian rant. He was hosting the Juno Awards. He said this. He says, you guys know I'm a hometown kid. I'm a hometown kid who never left," Bublé told the audience. "And as I stand here and I look at my fellow artists, I'm proud to be Canadian." Michael Bublé attempted to reference a line from first popularized by the American former First Lady Michelle Obama, asserting, "When they go low, we get high." Maybe they do. That could be what he's talking about. I have no idea. Is weed legal in Canada? I don't know. They could be getting high, which he rapidly corrected. The singer never identified the they he was challenging, but he continued, "When you love something, you show up for it, and we always will. We will because we're formidable, because we're fearless, because we don't just acknowledge our differences, we embrace them." I don't know what that has to do with like the pro-Canada rah-rah message. Like, that's like, that feels like the Hollywood diversity shtick that is sloganeering at best, and you just throw it in there and it doesn't really connect at all to the rest of your comments. He stated, because they don't just make us stronger, they make us a hell of a lot more interesting. So I guess your differences make you interesting. Unless, of course, you disagree with them or have different views politically, in which case they will other you and turn you into something that's considered to be evil. He says, "We are the greatest nation on earth and we are not for sale," he concluded. Look, I'm actually 100% on board for celebrities loving where they're from. I think it's important to have love for the country of origin, acknowledging all the good and the bad that comes from the place in which you were born. I think it's part of how we've evolved as a species. We have our tribes, we have our groups, and pride in your homeland isn't a bad thing, at least not inherently. I don't think you should have pride in government. I think that's not really the point. I think having pride in your fellow citizen, the ones who grow up next to you, your neighbors, the culture that you share, that's good. And what's funny about it is, and I'll get more into it in a bit, is that given how much Trump loves America and how pro-nationalism he is, seeing such a thing is actually something I ironically think that Trump would agree with, that every country should have love, respect, and joy for their home country and real desire to show out for where you're from. But what's weird is that in America now, that's kind of taboo. You're not supposed to be pro-America, even if you're from here. You're kind of held to a different standard. You're supposed to acknowledge the faults of your nation without acknowledging the many successes, unless those successes are kind of drenched in just modern day neoliberalism and all of the things that come with that, the things that have been instilled in the last 30, 40 years, but not the founders of the country or anything that made the country what it was or allowed it to become the great nation that it is today, that I do believe America is. For all its flaws, I think that this is a great country that just happens to have a traditionally awful government most of the time. And I don't put Trump even in a greater category necessarily than all of them. Best of a bad bunch doesn't necessarily mean that you're the greatest thing ever, though I do support a good portion of what he's going through politically right now. I just thought that this was interesting because I don't know, what's the joke is like Canadians are very, very polite and kind. You don't expect Canadians to get up in your face anyways. So I suppose it's good that they say it in a polite manner. And it wasn't just this. There was the story about the Canadian American Pie actress, what was it, Jasmine Mooney, who was stopped by ICE because she did not have valid credentials to get into the country, and she was put into a detention facility. Jasmine Mooney, who appeared in American Pie, said she was held in chains and left to sleep on a mat in the San Luis Detention Center in Arizona following her arrest while trying to cross the U.S.-Mexico border as she tried to renew her documentation. An ICE spokesperson told Newsweek that the individuals who break immigration law will be detained regardless of nationality. The Canadian government told Newsweek that it cannot interfere on behalf of Canadian citizens. It says their spokesperson said Jasmine Mooney was detained on March 3rd by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement for not having legal documentation to be in the United States. Mooney was processed in accordance with the Securing Our Borders executive order dated January 21st. All aliens in violation of U.S. immigration law may be subject to arrest, detention, and if found, removable by final order, removal from the United States regardless of nationality. And these types of things have kind of led to a powder keg of interactions back and forth between the U.S. and Canada. I was reading this story about actor Anson Mount. He's a Star Trek guy now, but I know him from Hell on Wheels, which was very, very good. That was like an AMC show, right? Very, very good. He unfortunately was cast in The Inhumans, which nobody actually liked or watched, but he got really upset during like a live Q&A. I think it was on Instagram. He said, how do I feel about life under Trump? I married a Canadian for a reason. The implication is that he might use his wife's Canadian citizenship to move back to Canada. This echoes the sentiment of a lot of extreme leftist celebrities who are so hateful of President Trump and half of America who voted for him that they renounce their country because they can't handle the results of democracy. Well, yeah, we saw Rosie O'Donnell. She fled to, was it Ireland in the last couple of weeks, something like that. I actually do have a fair amount of respect for the ones who claim that they were going to leave and then actually do, because most of them just say it as a virtue signal and they don't actually ever go anywhere. But what's funny about it is, look, the point of this isn't the politics. The point of this is that Canada and America actually have a unique connection when it comes to the entertainment industry. For the most part, for actors to break out, and there are a lot of great actors in Canada. There are so many of them, and there are so many shows that I love that are uniquely Canadian. It's kind of a trope that we joke about. Not all of them like take place in Canada, but there's so many shows that were made in the early 2010s that I love that were all filmed in Canada because of the tax credits. I mean, all of the Arrowverse was filmed in Vancouver, and so much of American television is filmed in Vancouver. But I think of shows like Republic of Doyle, which takes place in St. John's, Newfoundland, and is actually filmed there, and is discussed about how they liked filming there because of the fact that so many of the actors were from there, and they made their national pride, their pride in their home, part of the show. But there was all sorts of shows, shows like Haven, which was filmed in Canada but takes place in Maine, Continuum, so many shows, The Listener, so many great Canadian actors. It was like anything with Jason Priestley in it, pretty much you're gonna know is going to be a great Canadian show. Roger Cross, actors like that, so many great television actors in Canada. But the thing is like Canadians, a lot of times they have to come to America to really get their break so that they can break away from being a Canadian actor and really break into being just an actor, right? Like really to reach the next level in Hollywood, you have to do that. But then at the same time, America relies heavily on Canada because of the tax credits that are given to shows when they film in places like Vancouver. Like, for instance, The X-Files. The X-Files took place in Canada, in Vancouver, for the most of its first however many 5 or 6 seasons. So they had to make everywhere that the X-Files takes place, like Middle America. Basically the Canadian woods stood in for small town America for however many seasons, and the show didn't even move to America until the last few seasons because David Duchovny was sick of having to commute back and forth with his family. And then a lot of people arguably believe that it ruined the show when they moved the X-Files from Canada back to America, because those Canadian backwoods, they made the show what it was. I also liked watching the show to listen to all of the people who would play like local police, like local American police officers that had crazy Canadian accents. It's like one of my favorite things about going back and rewatching that show. And the thing I thought was funniest about all of this is that I think Trump would probably be the first to say, like, even if he doesn't think Canada is the greatest country in the world, because he believes America is the greatest country in the world, he would respect their nationalism and the pride that they have in their home country. And considering the whole talk of tariffs and what's better for what nation, it's actually really, really interesting that Canada, in a lot of ways, legislates their own entertainment industry to make sure that they are not losing sight of talent in Canada, because they do have a certain understanding that you must take pride and invest in your own country if you want it to succeed. So the CRTC requires, I believe it's like 55, I think I pulled it up here. Yeah, 55% of programming annually has to be Canadian, and then 50% after 6 p.m. every night. So current Canadian content percentages are as follows. Radio play is 35%, with partial exceptions for some specialty formats such as classical. Some stations are required to air a higher percentage based on the promise of performance information during their license submission. So they want to make sure that Canadian artists, up to 35% of the musicians, they want to make sure that those artists are highlighted by being Canadian on a Canadian channel. Makes perfect sense to me. Like, America, when it comes to entertainment, is a net exporter. We send our entertainment all over the world. Makes perfect sense. But it doesn't make sense for any country that's trying to build up their own artists, their own sense of identity as it comes to movies and television and music. It doesn't make sense for them to only want to import American work. It makes perfect sense for them to want to raise up the profile of people in their industry. I don't know how I feel about government legislating that. Personally, I don't think that government should be legislating something like that. But the point is, it makes sense. It makes sense for Canada to do what is best for Canadians. It makes sense for them to play a certain percentage of Canadian artists on Canadian radio. It makes sense for them to play a certain amount of Canadian television shows on Canadian television. So it's weird when countries come out and they seem upset when Americans do what's best for America, when Canadian actors and performers who come from a place that champions their country don't understand why America would do the same for itself. I would be interested to know what you guys think about something like this. It's a little bit different from the stuff that we normally cover, but I do think that it goes to show that as the world becomes more globalistic, it gets harder and harder for a country to do what's best for itself when it's the size of America, when everybody wants to take what you have and wants to use your resources and doesn't understand that you yourself sometimes have to do what's best for you. So, look, what do you guys think about this? Did it annoy you when you saw Michael Myers wear a shirt like that? Does it annoy you when actors talk about going and moving to other places despite the fact that they made their bones here in America and it was the American Hollywood system and American consumers that made them the stars that they are? Does that bother you? Does it not bother you? Let me know down below. Pop Culture Crisis, guys, we are live 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You should tune in. We have a lot of fun. See you there, guys. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.